This video is divided into 14 chapters. The Aṣṭavakra Gītā is much more radical than a simple book about meditation or morality. Its central teaching is that the freedom you are searching for is already your nature, but you overlook it because you identify yourself with the body, mind, emotions, desires, and the world. Chapter 1. You are not the body. The Aṣṭavakra Gītā begins by questioning our most basic assumption. I am this body. Your body is constantly changing. The body you had as a child is gone. Your cells change, your appearance changes, your strength changes, and eventually, the body dies. Yet something seems to remain throughout all these changes. The awareness that knows these changes are happening. Astavakra asks you to investigate. If I can observe my body, can the body itself be the deepest I? This is the beginning of Atmavikara, self-inquiry. Chapter 2. You are the witness of the mind. The same principle is applied to thoughts. You can observe, I am thinking, I am angry, I am afraid, I am happy, I am confused. But if you can observe a thought, then the thought is something being observed. The Aṣṭavakra Gītā therefore directs attention toward the observer. Thoughts change constantly. The witness of those thoughts does not appear to change in the same way. This distinction between the changing experience and the awareness of experience is one of the foundations of Advaita Vedānta. Chapter 3. You are pure consciousness. The text goes further than saying, you have consciousness. It essentially says, you are consciousness. This is a much more radical statement. Normally we think, I am a person who possesses consciousness. Astavakra reverses this. The person is something appearing within consciousness. Your body, thoughts, memories, personality, relationships and experiences are objects of awareness. The deeper self is the awareness in which they appear. Chapter 4. You are already free. This is perhaps the most striking teaching of the Aṣṭavakra Gītā. Most spiritual paths begin with the assumption, I am bound, therefore I need liberation. Astavakra challenges this assumption. He says, in essence, your true nature has never been bound. The bondage is created by mistaken identification. For example, I am this body. I am my thoughts. I am my failures. I am my social identity. I need this particular thing to become complete. The moment these identifications are seen as objects within awareness rather than the self itself, the nature of bondage is questioned. Chapter 5. The ego creates the feeling of separation. The ego isn't simply having a name or personality. The deeper problem is the psychological sense of I am a separate entity. The ego constantly divides reality, me versus you, mine versus yours, success versus failure, pleasure versus pain, good versus bad. The Aṣṭavakra Gītā asks you to look beneath these divisions. At the level of pure awareness, what you call me and what you call world are not experienced as two independent realities. This is the heart of Advaita, not two. Chapter 6. Desire creates the feeling of incompleteness. One of the most important ideas is the relationship between desire and identity. Suppose the mind says, when I get that relationship, I'll be happy. When I earn more money, I'll be complete. When people recognize me, I'll finally feel satisfied. The underlying message is always, I am incomplete right now. Astavakra challenges this assumption. It isn't necessarily saying that you cannot have goals or enjoy life. Rather, it asks, what if your fundamental completeness does not depend on obtaining anything? Chapter 7. Detachment doesn't mean abandoning life. This is often misunderstood. The Aṣṭavakra Gītā isn't simply saying, leave your house, abandon your possessions, and go into the forest. Its deeper emphasis is on inner non-attachment. You can have possessions without believing they define you. You can have relationships without believing another person completes your existence. You can work towards success without making success your identity. You can experience pleasure without becoming psychologically dependent upon it. The issue isn't necessarily having things. The issue is believing, without these things, I am incomplete. Chapter 8. Thoughts are not the ultimate reality. Imagine sitting quietly and watching your mind. A thought appears, I might fail. Then another. What will people think? Maybe everything will work out. Then another completely unrelated thought. Where did these thoughts come from? Where did they go? And most importantly, what was aware of all of them? Aṣṭavakra directs attention away from constantly changing the contents of the mind and toward recognizing the awareness in which those contents appear. This is why the teaching can feel radically different from ordinary self-help. Self-help often asks, how can I improve my thoughts? Aṣṭavakra asks, who is aware of the thoughts? Chapter 9. You don't need to become someone else. This is perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the teaching. Spiritual seekers can easily create another identity. I need to become enlightened. I need to become more spiritual. I need to meditate more. I need to become pure. But Aṣṭavakra can turn even spirituality into another form of ego. Because if you say, I am an unenlightened person, trying to become an enlightened person, you have created two identities. The teaching instead points toward recognition. Not become the self, but recognize what you already are. Chapter 10. Moksha is not a place. In this philosophy, liberation isn't necessarily going somewhere after death. It is freedom from mistaken identification here and now. Heaven is still something that the individual desires to reach. Moksha, in Advaita, is fundamentally different. It is the recognition that the deepest self was never truly bound. So the question changes from, how do I get somewhere, to, what is it that I am right now? Chapter 11. The world is not separate from consciousness. This is where the Aṣṭavakra Gītā becomes extremely philosophical. Advaita doesn't merely say, the world exists and God is somewhere behind it. It investigates the relationship between consciousness and experience itself. Everything you have ever experienced, your body, another person, a sunset, fear, love, thought, memory, is known through consciousness. You never encounter an experience outside awareness. Therefore, Aṣṭavakra directs attention toward the fundamental reality of that awareness. This is where the text approaches the profound Advaitic insight. The apparent multiplicity of experience arises within the one reality of consciousness. Chapter 12. You are beyond pleasure and pain. Aṣṭavakra doesn't deny that the body experiences pain or that the mind experiences pleasure. Instead, it distinguishes between the experience and the awareness of the experience. Pain comes, pain changes, pain disappears. The awareness in which the experience occurs is not itself the changing experience. This doesn't mean you should become emotionally numb. It means you don't have to make every experience into an identity. Instead of, I am suffering, you begin investigating. Suffering is being experienced. What is aware of it? That shift is fundamental. Chapter 13. You are beyond praise and criticism. If your identity depends on people's opinions, then your emotional state becomes dependent upon them. Someone praises you. I am great. Someone criticizes you. Maybe I'm worthless. The ego moves between these two extremes. Aṣṭavakra points toward a self that is prior to both. Praise doesn't add anything to consciousness. Criticism doesn't subtract anything from consciousness. The person may receive praise or criticism, but the deeper self remains untouched. 14. Spiritual practices can also become attachments. This is one of Aṣṭavakra's most radical points. Meditation can become an ego identity. I meditate more than others. Knowledge can become an ego identity. I understand spirituality. Renunciation can become an ego identity. I have renounced more than everyone else. Even enlightenment can become another concept. Therefore, the Aṣṭavakra Gītā repeatedly brings the seeker back to direct recognition rather than accumulation. You don't need to collect spiritual experiences. You need to investigate the one who is experiencing them. The book is essentially saying, you are searching for what you already are. You search for peace, but the self is peaceful. You search for freedom, but the self is free. You search for completeness, but the self is complete. You search for God, but the deepest reality you are seeking is not separate from the consciousness through which you are searching. And this creates the central paradox. The seeker is searching for the self, while the seeker itself appears within the self. If I had to compress the entire philosophy into one idea, stop identifying yourself with everything that appears in consciousness and recognize the consciousness in which everything appears as your true nature. That is why the Aṣṭavakra Gītā can feel so different from many other spiritual texts. It doesn't primarily ask, what should I do to become enlightened? It asks something much more fundamental. Who is the one trying to become enlightened? And once that question is taken seriously, the entire spiritual journey changes.